In my hands, I'm holding a beautiful charity box. You may be able to see the words on the charity box that say, Tzedakah tatzil mimavet. Charity saves from death. These are the words of King Solomon in the book of Proverbs. Now, this charity box is the charity box we use in the synagogue 6 days a week, except on Shabbat. And this is the charity box we collect tzedakah with each and every day, shacharit and mincha, Sunday through Friday. This beautiful silver charity box didn't look this way originally. Dini and I were in Israel, in Jerusalem. We were walking by an antique shop and we saw this beautiful charity box. And on it says the date, which you cannot see, but it says that this was manufactured, it was made by some artist in the year 1817. And we immediately decided, for some reason, that this was the most beautiful charity box, unique and antique, and we would want to bring it back as a gift for the synagogue. And for the past 10 years, this charity box has sat on the bima and is where everyone that comes to shul gives their tzedakah. Now, the reason why it's so beautiful is because one of our members, Henry Arari, who's a jeweler, took it and offered to polish it and had it restored to this beautiful condition it's in now. When I think of this charity box, it's very special. Why? Because I think about the artist who made it in 1817, over 200 years ago. And he thought he was making a beautiful charity box that, would last maybe for a few years. Little did he know that over 200 years later, his act of creating this charity box would still be generating good deeds. That every single day, dozens and dozens of people will be giving tzedakah, giving charity, and this money will be going to help poor and needy people in the community, because that's what we do with the funds in the charity box. We use it to help poor and needy people. How would he have ever known that this beautiful charity box that he made would have such long-lasting positive repercussions? And I think about this and the power of a good deed. We never know how far one of our good deeds is going to go and the type of influence it's going to have. Let me tell you a story that I heard from Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon Adelson, as you know, is one of the wealthiest Jews in the world. He's worth about $20 billion. And he is also a huge philanthropist and a huge Zionist and supports countless causes. One of the causes that he spearheaded and that he contributes hundreds of millions of dollars to is Birthright Israel, which takes about 60,000 college kids every year to Israel. And once at a birthright dinner, he explained why he decided to spearhead this wonderful organization and program called Birthright Israel. And he said as follows. He said, I grew up in a poor family. My parents were immigrants. My father was from Czechoslovakia. And my father was a taxi driver. And we were a poor family. We barely had enough food to put on the table. And he said, my father drove a taxi for a living. This was during the days before Uber. And he would work 10, 12, 14-hour shifts from early morning to late at night. And I vividly remember he would come home every night after a long, exhausting day of driving his taxi with pockets filled with cash. Because in those days, they didn't pay by credit card. Everyone paid by cash. And he would come home with bulging pockets of dollar bills and $5 bills that he made during his day. And the first thing he would do when he walked into the house is would walk over to the windowsill where my mother had a charity box for J&F, the blue and white boxes. And the first thing he would do is start stuffing dollar bills into the charity box for J&F. And this was before the creation of the State of Israel, before 1948. And he says, as a little child, I would look at my father and I would say to myself, why is he putting the money in the charity box? We need it for our family. And one day I said to my father, Dad, we don't have enough food in the house. Why are you putting all your hard-earned money into the charity box? And my father turned to me and said words that I've lived with my entire life. He said, Sheldon, always remember in life that no matter what you have, there are always those that have less than you. There are always those who are less fortunate than you. And he said, my father loved Israel so much that he always tried to help the Yishuv, the small Jewish population in Israel, in any way he could. But sadly, he could never afford to actually go to Israel. And in 1948, when Israel was created, he longed to go, but he could not afford it. And he passed away with never having gone to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. He said, when I was able to afford my first ticket to Israel, I went into my father's closet, and my father and I shared something in common, Sheldon Adelson says. We both wore the same size shoe, 9D. And I put on my father's shoes. And I went with my father's shoes to the airport and boarded a El Al flight. And then I came to Israel and I walked the land to its width, to its length, and I went everywhere walking in my father's shoes. And I brought my father and his spirit to the land of Israel. And Sheldon Adelson said at this dinner that because I saw how my father loved Israel, but was never able to go to Israel, I decided to institute an organization called Birthright Israel and donate hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that every Jew has the right and the privilege that he deserves as his birthright or her birthright to go to her homeland, to her ancestral land, to visit the graves of her patriarchs and his patriarchs and matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and to walk the land of our forefathers, something my father never had the privilege to do. And I think about, again, Sheldon Adelson's father, a poor immigrant, ecking out a meager living, just trying to make ends meet. And not realizing that by putting those few dollars in the charity box, he would inspire his son, that his son would become one of the wealthiest Jews. And he would, through his few dollars, inspire his child to give not only to Birthright Israel, but to countless other Jewish causes, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to charity. And it shows us the power of a deed. Like the man who made this beautiful charity box would have never known that his good deed would still be living on today. So too, each and every one of us never could estimate the power of every good deed, especially when we do it with the right intentions, with the right kavanah, with the love and with goodwill. Every little gesture can live on for eternity. And so when we go through this period now, let us not minimize the strength and the power of our deeds. And we may feel like we have very little control, but we never know how one small deed could have a huge impact and ramification. The whole lesson of this virus is that things that seem small could be huge, and things that seem huge at the moment could actually turn out to be very small and insignificant. This virus is so small that no one could even see it. You need a microscope. Until the 1800s, we didn't have microscopes to even be able to know what this was. Now we could finally see it under a microscope. But something so small could have such a huge impact that it could literally shut down the whole world. So don't think that anything you do is small. Again, things that you may seem big at the moment, in the long run may turn out to be small and insignificant. And something so small, like putting a coin in a charity box, could have huge, everlasting ramifications. I want to conclude with a legend told about King Solomon, the same one I quoted earlier, who said charity saves from death. And what King Solomon means is that acts of kindness and goodness gives life to the world. As they say, you make a living by what you get, you make a life by what you give. Most of us can't make a living these days. It's difficult. But we could all make a life through our love, through our goodness, through our charity, our kindness. Charity is not only financial. There's charity of time, charity of efforts. Anything we do for others in one way or another is called charity, and it adds to life in this world. Life, physical life, spiritual life, emotional life. So King Solomon, the one who said those words, there's a legend told about him that he once said to his advisors, I want you to go out and find me something that in times of euphoria, it will keep me humble. And in times of despair, it will keep me hopeful and optimistic. And so his advisors went out with this challenge to find something that in times of euphoria will make sure he doesn't become prideful and arrogant, but remains humble. And at the same time, the same object during times of disappointment or despair, they will keep him optimistic, faithful, and hopeful. And finally, one advisor came back with a ring, and he presented it to King Solomon. And King Solomon looked at the ring, and on the ring, there were 3 words, Gam ze yavor, which means in Hebrew, this too shall pass. And the advisor said to King Solomon, this, your majesty, will be the answer. And King Solomon said, yes, the wisest of all kings. He said, this will remind me that in times of success and abundance and accomplishment and euphoria, remain humble, because this too shall pass. Nothing lasts forever. Just realize you're a humble human being. On the other hand, in times of disappointment, don't fall into despair or depression, but remember, Gam ze yavor, this too shall pass. And I think these are the 3 most important words to remember as we go through this pandemic. On the one hand, if we're feeling despair, if we're feeling depressed, if we're feeling sad, Remember, Gam Ze Yavor, this will pass. God willing, a few weeks, maybe a few months, but we'll get out of this. But on the other hand, also realize that there's a lot of blessings and beauty in this moment, in this opportunity. When was the last time you were able to spend weeks and months exclusively with your children, not having to run out to go to any other engagements or appointments or meetings, but you could give them your undivided attention and play with them and create memories that will last forever? Don't take it for granted. Gam Ze Yavor. When things go back to normal, you're going to look back and say, wow, that was a great period that I was able to spend so much time with my children. When was the last time you could spend so much time with your spouse? This is a time to reconnect, reignite old feelings. Go back to having date nights in your house. Try to rekindle what you had and make sure that you build your marriage and make it stronger during this period. This is also a time for yourself to think. When did you have so much time to be contemplative, to be in solitude, which is a blessing, to sit and contemplate and think about yourself, about your life, about self-improvement, to think about being creative? You have time to think for yourself. There are many blessings that can be seized and opportunities in this time. And remember, it won't last forever. Gam Ze Yavor, this too shall pass. And one day, you'll tell your children, maybe your grandchildren, about this period, and make sure that you can be proud of what you did with this time that was given to you. So remember, don't be depressed, don't fall into despair. Gam Ze Yavor. On the other hand, don't take this time for granted. Use it to the best of your ability. Don't just walk around and ask yourself, what can I do to distract myself? Ask yourself, what's the purpose of life, rather than what I can do to distract myself from life. Life is a gift. Get to know yourself. Get to spend more quality time with yourself, with your spouse, with your children. Enjoy the Zoom gatherings with friends and family. When was the last time you spent so much time on Zoom or Facebook with your family, with your children, with your grandchildren, wherever they are? You know where they are all the time now. You could reach them anytime. They're not running around. You could work on any schedule. You don't have to wait for them to come home from school, your grandchildren, or for your children to get home from work. You could always reach them. Seize this moment, seize this opportunity, and together, Gam Ze Yavor, will get through the difficult times. As a wonderful woman in our congregation, Pearl Ginsberg, always says to me, Rabbi, tough times pass and tough people last. Wishing everyone a beautiful, happy, and a beautiful, magnificent day, and may we only hear good news of health and happiness, and prayers for all those in need of refuah shalema. May God send a swift and speedy end to this pandemic. God bless you with love and blessings from Palm Beach Synagogue. Dini and I wish you all the best.